Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. Last week when I made this egg cup, there was a comment back, I believe by Larry, that said, I think in jest, why not make a off-axis egg cup? Well, I took that as a challenge. Now, I'm not sure exactly what he meant by off-axis, but to me, it evolved into a triple egg cup with 3 off-axis turnings here to get the cups. Now, mind you, this project is not for the faint of heart. It was definitely a wild ride turning it to get these cups in here. I spent a lot of time considering the safety elements. How do I make sure that it stays on the lathe, that it is secure, that I can shift it reliably, and then while turning, make sure that I stood out of the way just in case things came apart. Well, here it is. It can be done, a triple off-axis egg cup. Well, let's make it a triple off-axis egg cup.
I glued up pieces of red cedar for this project. Nothing fancy, just faced them off and glued them with Titebond 2. However, I will never again use Titebond 2 on a project where glue lines will show. After sanding, I could feel the glue joint line. I've been using Titebond Original Extend on segmented projects. The glue lines come out much better then, but I also need to check out Titebond Original Plain. That may work as well. At this point, I only want to get it round and cut a tenon on one end. This tenon I will glue into a doubled piece of 3/4 inch plywood to serve to mount the wood to the lathe and as my means to adjust the axis. More on that later. I've mounted a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to a steel faceplate, then centered the thicker double plywood piece on it. I've screwed the 2 pieces together from the backside. Then I'm proceeding to cut a mortise in the plywood. I'll first use a parting tool, but it's kinda slow. I switched to a square carbide cutter to speed things along. Finally, I glued my cedar into the plywood mortise. After the glue dried, I screwed 8 more screws through the doubled plywood into the cedar. A bit of added security against things coming apart in the upcoming off-axis turning. Then I again screwed the 2 pieces of plywood together again. With the corner still on the plywood, I could still get a screw into the corner through the thinner piece into the thicker piece of plywood. Now I can do some turning on the primary axis, fortunately between centers, mostly. I decided my block of cedar was too long, so I wasted off an inch or 2. Then I put a slight dome on the top. Then I sanded the top and finished it with beeswax and mineral oil. Much easier to finish this now before I put the egg cutouts in the top. Now for the first offset. I previously made a paper template with the position of my center hole and 3 offset holes, 1¼ inches and at 120-degree angles. Now I'm unscrewing the 2 pieces of plywood, shifting the axis to the first offset hole, and screwing the pieces of plywood together again. A 3/8 inch dowel maintains the position. I left the plywood pieces square. This provided more opportunities to screw them together. On the other hand, I had to be extremely careful not to let a hand or arm wander over into their path. They generated a lot of wind, which served as a danger warning. With it mounted, it's time to turn the first cup. With the axis shifted off 1¼ inches, turning is kind of wild. I have to keep the speed very low. I decided the speed was too low to use a gouge, so I used a round nose scraper. Even this is kind of wild. Going straight into the bottom was not too bad, but when I rounded over to the sides of the hollow, it generated more awful vibration. So, very slow work. After a while, I decided to drill out some of the hollow with a Forstner bit. Even then, the going was very slow. When finished, I sanded and finished this hollow. and then went on to the second hollow. I have to unscrew the plywood, shift the axis to the next hole, and screw them together again. Then drill out some of the hollow. Then I tried to use a gouge, but against the end grain and the domed top of the wood and with a very low speed, it was difficult to control the gouge. So I switched back to the round nose scraper. After hollowing, I sanded and finished this hollow. No better time than now. Now for the home stretch. But first I have to shift the axis back to the original center axis. Now with everything back on the center axis and the tailstock in place, I can turn up the speed again. I have a rubber stopper on the live center to prevent damage to the finished top. I'll start with a large gouge. I'm searching for a good shape for the base, spindle, and top. I measured the diameter of the top, then laid out that distance along the side of the turning, but added more to make the top about 2/3 of the height, an approximation of the golden mean. At first it seemed clunky, and I feared whether I could get a pleasing shape out of this project. I kept on removing wood until the proper shape emerged. It was in there all the time. I just had to cut away the excess wood. The wood is soft and will not hold fine edges. So with the shape completed, I sanded and finished this area. Finally, it's time to part it off. The waist is large since I drove long screws into the plywood into the cedar. I don't want to hit one of those screws, but I did waste away more of the waist side so I could angle in and make a concave cut in the base. Normally, this is not a big deal, but here I have the plywood square corners whipping by at high speed. I definitely do not want to hit my hand or arm with one of these corners. Wasting this wood away gives me room to comfortably access the underside. Finally, I had to carefully reach my left hand under the wood, avoiding the spinning corners to catch the egg cup when it separated. Well now, I have a triple egg cup, candy dish, jewelry holder, or whatever. This is more of a proof of concept than a finished piece. It was a challenge piece, plus the 3 hollows have a small spacing issue. Would I do it again? Not very soon. And I would probably find another way to do it, perhaps in 3 pieces, top, spindle, and base. But here it is, a triple egg cup turned using multiple axes. With this experience, I have more confidence to do other off-axis turning, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, please click the like button on this video and subscribe to both my website and YouTube channel. And do yourself a favor, always wear your face shield. Until next time, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns.